Hello everyone, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking tripods are usually used outside other than studio work, so why are you sat inside? This should be an outside video. I tried. Yesterday I went to a local stream to try and do this video and there were just loads of flies there. And also, if I'm completely honest, I was a bit scared about falling in. So plan B this morning was to go to the beach at sunrise and just do it in like a lovely glowing orange light. That didn't quite happen either. Anyway, onwards. If you're watching this video, which obviously you are, I'm imagining you're one of two groups of people. Either you're new to photography, you don't really know when you should use a tripod and you're hoping this video will help you, or you know plenty about photography and tripods and you just saw the thumbnail and thought, wonder if that guy's gonna get stuck in the wet sand. No. Too much of an athlete. No. Anyway, 10 times to use a tripod. I should preface all of these by saying that a tripod really has one job, and that's to make your camera stable over a period of time. Could be a few seconds, could be hours, but that's its only job. So all of these different situations I'm going to talk about are basically just to keep the camera steady. Where was I going with that? Number one, when it's dark. When you're shooting in the dark, your sensor needs longer to gather enough light to make a good photo. That means your shutter speed has to be slower. That means that if you're hand holding your camera, it's likely to be shaky when you take the picture. So a tripod is usually necessary when you're shooting in the dark. Number two, when you've got loads of camera resolution. Now over the last few years, people have been buying cameras with 20 odd, 30 odd, 40 odd, or 50 odd megapixels. And the vast majority of the time, they don't need them. People buy a camera with 20 odd megapixels and all they're gonna do is put the photos on Instagram. It's pointless. I've printed photos up to 48 inches, which is like that much, with a 16 megapixel camera, which by today's standards is pretty small, and they come out great. You don't need loads of resolution, but if you insist on getting a camera with loads of resolution, it's going to mean a few things. Number one, the pictures are going to take up loads of room in storage on hard drives and memory cards. Number two, to get the most out of the camera, you're going to need really good lenses, otherwise it's pointless having that resolution. And number three, you're going to need to use a tripod more than if you had a lower resolution camera to get the maximum sharpness and detail out of the image. So, I mean, if you're willing to carry a tripod everywhere and you have a lot of storage and you've got the best lenses, great. If not, stop buying high resolution cameras. Number three, when you stop down. So when you want loads of the image in focus, you need to stop down to a smaller aperture, which means that you need to shoot at a slower shutter speed, which a lot of the time means that you're better off having a tripod. Number four, when you want motion. So when you want motion, obviously you require a slower shutter speed, which means, again, you're gonna need a tripod. That's just gonna get a bit boring saying that, isn't it? Number five, when you're shooting video, handheld video always looks terrible. Number six, HDR. If you're new to photography, you might not be sure what HDR is. Basically, it stands for high dynamic range, but it means blending images together to make a more realistic image. I talk about it in some of my other videos. There are loads of videos out there explaining exactly what it is and what it does. A lot of the time when you're doing it, you're better off with a tripod. Now, there's incredible software out there that can help align an image properly if you've not used a tripod, but more often than not, if you've got a tripod, you're gonna get a much cleaner result. Number seven, panoramas. It's never been easier to make panoramas, and generally I just do it handheld. You just sort of that's basically all you have to do, and then stitch it together in Lightroom or Photoshop. But if you use a tripod, you can be much more precise and you can make sure that the camera's level all the way through, and therefore you don't have to crop as much when you're trying to bring it together in post. Number eight, when you need to slow down. I'm possibly the most guilty person of this in the world, but when I've got my camera and I'm walking around a city or a mountain, generally I'll just look like I'm taking constant panoramas. I'll just be taking photos of everything, which is fine, but it rarely leads to the best results or images. A lot of the time, the best images I've had are when I've had a tripod, and it's not necessarily because the tripod has made the image better, but having a tripod is more of a pain, and it slows you down, and it means you only really stop for the photos that you're sure about, not the ones that you just see and snap away at. Number nine, I think I was stretching for 10, to be honest. I just put when you want to get stopped by security guards. Which is true. I mean, every time I'm using a tripod, particularly in places like London, I get stopped by security guards. They can't get enough of them. Every time I've got a tripod, they'll come over for a chat, tell me to go away. And on that note, if you are using tripods a lot in cities, it can be a good idea to have some sort of liability insurance, because if someone just trips over your tripod on the street, it might turn into a bit of a sticky situation, so look into that. And number 10 is when you need to shoot super high or super low. So if you're new to photography and you've been looking up tips, you've probably heard that one of the best ways to get an original composition is to either shoot from the hip or shoot from the knee, or basically just change the height of the camera so you're not always shooting at eye level. Well, a tripod can come in very handy when you're trying to do that. You can go really high and low. Okay, so that's the 10 times I'd recommend using a tripod. Now I have some bonus tips. The first one is to spread the legs when it's windy. Ta-da! The second is to add something heavy to the tripod, like a bag or some rocks or your child, whatever you can get your hands on. Now as a caveat to that, it's best not to do that when it's windy, because if you use your bag, for example, and it's windy, the bag will swing around and make the tripod less stable rather than more stable. So yes, that's right. In summary, what I'm saying is put a bag or something on your tripod when it's windy, but don't do that when it's windy. I don't make these things up. I just record them and put them on YouTube. And the third one, adjust the legs for wonk. What did I mean by that? I remember. So if your tripod's on uneven ground, like that, it might be tempting to just adjust the ball head to make sure that the camera is level, like that. Problem is, that means your legs are uneven, the camera is not in the tripod's centre of gravity, and it's more likely to fall over. You're better off adjusting the height of one or a couple of the legs to make sure that the head of the tripod is level. That way, the camera will always be in the middle of the tripod's centre of gravity. And my fourth and final tip, well, I committed a cardinal sin this morning, to be honest. I went to the beach with a tripod without taking CDs. So whenever you're on like wet sand or a boggy marsh or anything that's unstable with your tripod, take some CDs. So the reason for taking a CD is you put it on the floor and you then put the tripod foot into the middle of the CD, and that increases the surface area of the tripod foot, meaning that your tripod is less likely to sink. My typical go-to CDs for this job are Hilary Duff, Come Clean, great tune, Spice Girls, Holla, another belter, Space Jam, the soundtrack, big time. And if for some reason I can't find one of those, I turn to the AA route planner. Anyway, I hope that was in some way useful. If you're one of the people that tuned in to learn how to use a tripod, if you're one of the people that wanted to see me sink, ha! I shouldn't laugh, I probably will at some point. But in either case, thanks for watching.